Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. But we are going all Brexit and all that today, James.
Why have you brought Brexit into it, mate?
Europe, innit? Europe. Just
Okay, if you
Europe.
like.
We're going European.
Today's people's poll is on the restructure or the reforms, if you want, of the UEFA Champions League in 2024. Just give a shout out to the other two topics that were in yesterday's vote. The National League, I don't know if you'd seen this, Suj. They have fined, this is a really fascinating story. They've fined 16 of their clubs for failure to fulfill fixtures, predominantly fixtures that they basically could not have fulfilled anyway. It's a really, really deep story. The National League here is so bang out of order, and the fact that these clubs are struggling to survive, and they've dished out fines to many of these clubs. Also includes expunging Dover Athletics results for the whole season.
That requires a little bit of research on my side because I hadn't even looked at it, to be honest with you.
It's bad, put it this way. You know, when an authority like, I mean, the National League is obviously not like the FA or whatever, but there were more replies to their statement tweet than actual likes. It's normally a dead giveaway, but the kids call it ratioed or something, don't they?
Yeah.
The other topic we put up for debate was the Republic of Ireland. I was having a chat with one of our patrons, Dylan, over the weekend. I think on Friday, and we was talking about the idea of perhaps doing a podcast on the Republic of Ireland, because obviously Stephen Kenny has not won since he'd been in charge. And I said to Dylan, it probably needs to hit rock bottom before we probably put it up for a podcast. So anyway, the next night they lost at home to Luxembourg, and I'm like, right, I'll put that in the people's poll. There's a wider story with Ireland, I think, in the fact that they're trying to change the style of play, but they don't really have the players at the moment. I'm not quite sure what the expectation is from Irish people at the moment, because at the end of the day, they're one of the smaller nations in Europe, and they've kind of, when they've qualified for Europe, they've done it with a certain brand of football, which, although they're not British, is quintessentially quite British in terms of, we'll go quite direct, we'll go over the top. Set pieces are really important. They're trying to play a more European style, and at the moment they don't have the players to do that. So I think it was a really deep conversation, which I reckon we'll come back to that probably before the Euros. I know obviously Ireland haven't qualified, but I think we'll come back to that before the Euros. But the winner of the polls has said is the restructure of the Champions League, which is not official as yet, but we are expecting it to become so within the next 7 to 10 days.
The general kind of noises that have been coming out from the people involved are that it's basically as good as done.
Well, there was a meeting last month held with 55 UEFA nations, and basically nobody put up a fight against this potential restructure, and that says it's going to happen, which is a little bit surprising. I find that nobody said, "Oh, I don't like this." All 55 nations seem to have accepted this as a restructure. That's really strange that nobody, for whether it's a small nation, big nation, everybody just seems to be accepting it. So I assume, therefore, it's going to be ratified and it's going to go through. Before we talk about the changes, Suj, I want to ask your thoughts on what you think of the Champions League as it is now.
Yeah, I mean, as a supporter of a club that has never been in it and is also not, I mean, this season is a bit of an anomaly in that we've come quite close, but unlike you guys that are regularly, consistently in the last few years trying to get into Champions League or been in Champions League, I don't have as strong an opinion on it as maybe someone that is involved, because groups of 4, groups of 6, 24 teams, 32 teams doesn't bother me because I'm not in it, so it doesn't really matter to me. But I think it's been okay. I look at it from the outsider's kind of point of view. You get quite a lot of teams from smaller clubs in Europe, Denmark, Norway, some of the Central and Eastern European countries that do reasonably well, and cause a few upsets in the group stages. When you get through to the quarters, semis, you get some incredible matchups. some big teams going head to head and what have you, and some incredible games as well. I mean, PSG, Real in the last round, PSG were decent. Bayern Munich have been good. You want to see some of these big European clashes. We inevitably always get a lot of these big European clashes as well. And in the earlier rounds and the group stages, you get to see a few upsets and a few cock-ups along the way. So I don't particularly see, from an outsider's point of view, for I'm a supporter of a club that isn't in it, any major real problems or concerns.
It's interesting because you talk about, obviously, for those who don't know, Suj supports West Ham. I guess the dream, you would be happy to qualify for the Europa League this season, for example, just to get into Europe. There would be quite a buzz and excitement for West Ham to get into Europa League. And I understand that. We've spoken about this before on our Tottenham Patreon podcast, when I said to you, the dream for me in the early noughties was, can we get an UEFA Cup? Would be brilliant. So I've gone through that evolution of never believing my club could be a part of it, to obviously being in Madrid myself for a Champions League final, watching Tottenham 2 years ago. I have to say the mystique of the Champions League, once you're in it regularly, kind of does die off a little bit, which is a little bit odd to say because, listen, man, I'm so lucky to have been to a Champions League final. Is less than a million people can say they've done that over the last decade or so, and I'm one of them, right? I'm very, very fortunate. Also, the greatest moment, arguably, of my life in the Champions League in Amsterdam. But there are a lot, I guess, having not been in it this season, and it's hard to. I don't want to criticize the Champions League product this year, and I don't really want to criticize football this year because it's been so shite with no fans, etc. But the one thing I learned once I got in it was the group stages. For me, I could take it or leave that, in terms of I'm not bothered, because the draw happens, and ordinarily the majority of us can go, right, of the 16 teams going to go through, I can tell you 13 of them now. And that's normally the way it is. I mean, you talk about certain clubs from lesser nations doing quite well. I would argue that probably the last big shocks in the Champions League group stage were probably Celtic beating Barcelona and Bate Borisov beating Bayern Munich, which were both in 2012. That's like 9 years ago. We haven't had many real shocks like that to go, wow, Celtic beat Barcelona, for example. You know, Barcelona with Messi trying to qualify. A Bayern Munich with who would go on to win the Champions League that season, actually, in 2013. That was towards the start of their campaign. The likes of what Ajax did in 2019 has become far more unusual. Porto, I think, are the only side outside of Europe's big five leagues to reach a Champions League final this century. Obviously, they won it against Monaco and PSG, are the only two French teams that have made the final this year. So it really is dominated by Germany, Italy, England, and Spain, essentially. Other than, I think, those three teams, that's been the makeup of Champions League finals, has been from those four nations. Ajax got there, we spoke about it at the time, basically because they had a great crop of young kids all came through the system together at the same time. And it's basically the only way that I don't know, an Ajax or a Dynamo Bucharest or a Dynamo Kiev or someone like that, he's going to, I don't know why I said Dynamo Bucharest, it's a Steaua Bucharest probably. That's the only way that they're going to go and fulfill it in Europe, because the disparity, obviously, in terms of financial is way too big now. Do you know, Suj, who the UEFA president is?
No.
That's really interesting.
It was Platini before. Is Correct. Platini still kicking around?
No, don't be silly. No. He's long been kicked out. Money in his pocket and whatnot, allegedly.
Alessandro something.
You're close. Alexander Seferin.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't begin with him. Alexander Seferin, who's a Slovenian former lawyer. He's been the UEFA president since 2016. And I think that's interesting because a little bit like yourself, I think a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way. I think a lot of people think, oh, yeah, it's Gianni Infantino, who's obviously is FIFA now, took over from Sepp Blatter. And part of his mandate when he took over was two things were really prominent in his towards getting the vote to be voted in as UEFA president. One was to increase the sustainability of financial fair play, which is really interesting to bring into the longer term conversation about this. And I think it's something we'll come back to, because according to Tancredi Palmieri, who's quite a prominent journalist in Europe, he thinks that it's basically going to be abolished really soon.
Okay.
And we spoke about this a lot, obviously, with Manchester City's appeal about financial fair play. And that's probably something we're likely to revisit in the next couple of months, where it could be that it becomes some form of open water again for the bigger clubs to start spending money. And the other thing that he really wanted to do was kind of bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots in European competition, to make it a more level playing field, to give the Ajaxes, the Zagrebs, the Kievs a chance to kind of be back involved at the top table. What's now happened with the Champions League is more of a yes to making sure that European Super League doesn't break away.
Yeah.
The European Super League, something we spoke about before, which is for 99% of football fans, is that cannot happen. We cannot have Manchester United leaving the Premier League or PSG leaving Ligue 1 and just going, yeah, we're going to have a 38 game league season with the best teams from around Europe. The revamping of the Champions League is essentially, it's to stop this. So for those unaware, from 2024, what looks like it's going to happen is the Champions League is going to increase from 32 teams to 36 teams, which is not a major difference, but the actual platform of how the tournament's going to work is going to be extremely different. What they're calling it is a Swiss model. And it's something.
Why is that? Because I've seen that everywhere. What did the Swiss do that was so great that made them go to 36 teams?
I think, from what I've read, this is an idea that's nicked from chess, believe it or not.
Fine.
Where what you're going to have is, rather than having what we have now, which is 8 groups of 4 teams, we're basically, there's no group stage. It's a league.
Yeah.
It's a league of 36 teams. And you'll have, they'll be split into, I think it's 4 groups of, how does that work? 9.
Yeah.
9, 8, 20, 36, yeah.
Correct.
Of 9.
Yeah.
And
seeded into 4 groups.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
And they'll play a set amount of teams from each seed. So it's going to be 10 games. You'll play 5 teams at home and you'll play 5 teams away. And you're going to play 10 different teams. Whoever you play at home, you're not going to play away. So I presume in the case of, if you were a seeded team, let's take Real Madrid, who would presumably be a seeded team, you would think, they would play probably one other team or maybe 2 other teams from pot 1. I don't know, 3 teams from pot 2 and 3, maybe 2 teams from pot 4. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to break down yet. But if, say, Barcelona are also seeded, they're going to play probably 10 different teams to Real Madrid. I guess they might play 2 or 3 of the same teams that Real Madrid play, for example. And what it's going to do is create one big league table from 1st to 36. What the idea behind that is, the top 8 in that league will advance immediately to the last 16. And the teams that place between 9th and 24th will have basically a last 32 stage to get through to the last 16. That's the way that it's going to work. What do you think of that?
Why is what I think to that. Why? At the moment, so they end up with 10 groups. I'm trying to just, and I've been thinking about this. No, hang on. So before you get to knockout, though, so let's just call group stage. It's one big group, but it's pre-knockout stage.
Yeah.
You now play 10 games.
Yeah.
Whereas currently you play 6 games.
Yeah.
So that's 4 extra fixtures.
Yeah.
And only if you're in the top 8 do you then lose 2 fixtures, which would be your round of 32 right now.
Yep.
So
there's no round of 32 now in the Champions League. Knockout 16. Yeah.
So you're basically adding 4 fixtures onto the schedule of everybody.
Yep.
And for the teams that are 9th to 24th, you're adding 6 fixtures.
If they go all the way to the final, correct?
If they go all the way to the final. But yeah, I mean, just adding that home and away stage. Right. Okay. in an era where we're trying to get less games, not more, that's clearly aimed at, and I think I read this somewhere, trying to get people to reduce their domestic schedule and make their domestic leagues a little bit smaller. Okay, get that, fine. Secondly, how does any league table have any level of integrity when when everybody's played different games against different opposition? It doesn't at all. And you're telling me, okay, you got 4 teams in pot 4, well, and 4 teams in pot 3, or 8 teams in pot 3, or whatever. 8, that's 9 teams per, sorry, 4. If say there's 4 seeded groups, that's 9 teams per seeded group. Are you telling me all 9 teams of equal caliber? Of course not. 9 teams is half a league. You're telling me Manchester City, and who's 9th in the table right now? You lot or Arsenal or?
Easy.
I don't know. No, you're behind us. Sorry.
I think 9th is Arsenal or Villa. I think it's Arsenal.
Yeah, okay.
Right, isn't it?
So you're saying that if you seeded the top 9 in the English division, for example, you're going from Man City all the way down to Villa. European leagues are so spread in quality. How are you just like, it doesn't seem to be a very fair and equitable way of doing it. Yeah.
No, but then
the rules are the same for everyone, so it's fair. But it also, you could get stitched up and you couldn't.
Well, here's the really interesting thing. I don't know how they would display that as a draw. So let's say Manchester City are seeded team and they're going to play 9 teams. What do they do? Just draw out from each who Man City are going to play as their 9 games. I think it's literally going to have it worked out by a computer at the end.
Yeah, you've got to have a computer says ping.
Yeah, whereas I guess now, listen, you can get a group of death in the Champions League, or you can get a really easy draw. I've seen Tottenham come through groups of deaths and qualify, and I've seen Tottenham get easy draws and go out in the group stage, right? So obviously in the group stage, some teams have more difficult draws than others, but you understand that as a physical draw in terms of what you're seeing. I guess we could have nations like, let's say, for example, Atalanta very recently did well, have done well in the Champions League last 16 this year, quarterfinals the year before. When they obviously originally come in, they would have come in as a bottom seed, for example. So that would be one of the harder teams that you could obviously play from the supposed pot 4, I would guess. But then from that perspective, as I said, someone's got to draw them in the group stage as well, right? If you get a side comes in that's really good with a low coefficient, you know that's probably going to be your group stage group of death by default. So I agree from the integrity. I don't like it. I just don't like the idea that we have a competition that's got imbalance. Now there'll be plenty who will say, well, there is balance. There's 10 games, and actually probably to qualify, you have to remember originally what we've got. I don't know how many games. There's basically going to be 100 extra games in the Champions League. We're going to have a 36-team league, essentially. And at the end of every team playing 10 games, what's that, Suj? 190 games or something? I'm going to guess, roughly. Only 12 teams get eliminated immediately.
Yeah.
So we think about
it's a lot of football for not a lot of results.
Well, it's like we're diluting. We'll see it again in the summer. We diluted the quality of the European Championship by allowing 8 more teams in, and the group stage, there's only 8 teams get eliminated from 24 at the start of the group stage, because 4 of the best third place teams go through. Now, admittedly, to actually have the safety net in this league, you have to finish within the top 8. Well, I wonder who the top 8's going to be. It's not going to change anything. The top 8, we could probably look at it and go, well, there's probably 12 to 13 teams who've got a chance of being within the top 8 of that. There are certain things I like, i.e. that the top 8 obviously get to skip around, basically. Presumably go into that last 16 stage. I bet they'll be seeded as well against the teams that come through between 9th and 24th. I guess there is a case to say that the team that's 24th out of 36, who would have no chance of finishing in the top 8, gets a chance of a knockout match against someone that's competitive and they'll be able to beat to then get to the last 16. But are we not just going to see repeat games over years, over and over again? It's what we're looking at here. Because once we get 4 or 5 years deep into this format, if it sticks up to the next cycle in 2027 or whenever it is, if you're a Real Madrid or a Man United or someone who's regularly in the competition, you're going to have a lot of repeat games year on year, surely.
Yeah. I think that's a fair way of thinking of that's how it's going to pan out. It is designed. It does feel like it is designed to keep the top at the top a little bit. Why are they doing this? What is the sales pitch from our friends at UEFA?
What do you think
to make this happen?
We don't have to lie about it.
Make it more competitive?
No, it's about money.
They've said that they want to do this because it's of money.
No, of course they haven't.
Oh, that's why you think they want to do it. But why are they saying they want to do it?
It's what we all know. It's about money. You're guaranteeing everybody 10 games instead of 6 who qualifies for this. And obviously there'll be 4 extra teams in there. We'll come back to the 4 extra teams in a second in terms of how that might work. So you're giving people more guarantee. Guarantee 10 games rather than 6, more TV, more gate receipts, all these things, which allows the bigger clubs to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. If you're a team that's 9th, we talk about the Europa League, and we'll come back onto that in a little bit as well. Europa League, we always moan about it, don't we? What is it, 17 games to win the tournament? Fucking hell. And I mean, if you're Tottenham and you had to qualify, don't worry, we didn't get to 17 games, obviously, but it's like, wow, that's a big old trail if you have to go in the second qualifying round. So to win the Champions League now is going to be minimum of 17 games. If you're one of those teams that finishes 9th or 24th and gets to the final, you play 19 games. And for some teams, they're going to have to qualify to get into the 36 teams as well. So they might end up playing 21, 23 games to win the Champions League. And that's why part of the recommendation that's going to
right now it's 13 games.
That's it, yeah. 13. If you go straight into the group stage to win the Champions League or Champions League final, it's 13 games. It's going to be at least 17. For many teams, it's potentially going to be 19 games. It's very conceivable that someone finishes 9th to 24th will go on and get to a Champions League final. You've got to win knockout games, right? Levels the playing field a little bit. I mean, in 2019, Tottenham and Liverpool both finished second in their groups. And I mean, if Alisson didn't make a last-minute save at Anfield, and if Lucas Moura didn't equalise in the Nou Camp, both those two teams would have gone out in a group stage. Yep. So you've got one stage for one half of the season, then a knockouts later in the season. So teams can obviously do well in the knockout stage. 19 games. And that's why one of the recommendations I think that's going to come out from this, and the pressure is going to come back to the Premier League from the biggest clubs. If you think back to Project Big Picture, that awful thing that Liverpool, United and others were looking at was the recommendation of change the Premier League to 18 teams and scrap the League Cup.
I think the League Cup clubs in Europe will no longer participate in the League Cup if they do this.
Well, I think that's where it'll come to.
Yeah, I think the rest of us will be stuck. We'll still be in.
But one of the objectives from fans group around Europe is that we must protect domestic competition. Now, England, France, and a few others do have secondary cup competitions, but a lot don't. So a lot on the outside will go, well, yeah, just scrap your League Cup. It's 2021. Let's be honest, Man City or Man City's reserve team always gets to the final anyway. So let's take Man City out of that competition. I agree. I think the best way forward for the English League Cup would potentially be to have all the English teams that qualify for Europe don't compete in it. But there's massive problems with that. One, sponsorship for the competition, money, TV rights, the value that's put into the League Cup, which financially is not a lot at the moment anyway from the sponsors Carabao and the like. You want me to sponsor a competition that hasn't got Man City, Liverpool, Man United, Tottenham, Arsenal, whatever. It's not the same, is it?
I wonder what the value is, because I reckon the Premier League could probably write a check to just cover the cost of it and be like, sod this.
The Premier League don't have an interest in the EFL Cup. It's a football league competition.
No, it's true, but they have an interest in their clubs not playing in it, so they could write a check to the value of whatever the lost revenue is and sponsorship by not having those teams in, and it wouldn't make a dent in their bank account, in my opinion. So.
What would be really good to entice the prospect of FA Cup and League Cup winners would be to put a bigger pool at the end of it in terms of how much money you win. And one place I'd like to see that money come from is TV revenue from Champions League. Let's make an agreement before we know who's in it and say, yeah, we're going to take 20% of the TV money out of the money made by Champions League. It's going to come to us first. And yeah, we're going to put it back into the Football League, grassroots football, the EFL Cup, however they want to do it, that would be really good, rather than we just make the rich even more richer, because that's what we're looking at here. We're not looking at narrowing the gap between the haves and the have-nots. We're just making the haves stronger. So the 4 extra places, do you know anything about what's likely to happen with these?
No, I don't.
So the lesser nations, with respect, are obviously arguing for a little bit like what we had earlier in earlier years, is to have certain guarantee of certain domestic champions going into the 36 group stage teams. That's not likely to win the overall vote. What's more likely to happen is the following. France are probably more likely to be given a guaranteed 4th team. They're currently in the UEFA coefficients the 5th ranked nation, behind the big 4 of England, Italy, Spain, Germany. So France are probably going to be guaranteed a 4th team directly in. The other 3 places are likely to be, and we've discussed this before, historical placing. So what AC Milan have been fighting for is this idea that, well, they've won the European Cup, and it's 5 or 6 times. They should have, because of that, they should have automatic entry into the Champions League every year, irrespective of what they do in Serie A. Now, what's more likely to happen is it's probably likely to come down to highest ranked clubs on the UEFA coefficient. Now, AC Milan currently, I had a look, are ranked about 51st. No wonder they won it. No wonder they won it on historical performance, because they ain't getting through no coefficient until they start performing well. For example, in a UEFA Europa League.
Yep.
And this is one interesting thing, is the weighting of performance in Europa League coefficients. And I don't know what's going to happen yet in this UEFA Conference League. Don't worry, we'll get onto that. Is you can earn quite a bit of coefficient by doing well in those competitions. So, for example, in 2019, when Liverpool and Tottenham played in the Champions League final, Chelsea, who won the Europa League, actually finished with a higher coefficient that year than Liverpool and Tottenham. Right, and that's partly to do with the amount of games that they won en route to winning the Europa League. Whereas, remember, like I said, Liverpool and Tottenham very nearly went out in the group stage, for example.
And the knockout stages.
So remember, I've said to you a few times, how have Arsenal got a higher UEFA coefficient than Tottenham when Tottenham got to the Champions League final that year? Well, Arsenal got to the final of that competition that year, right? And if you win a lot of Europa League games, even in the group stage, you get quite a bit of coefficient for it. So that might be one way. The Conference League is going to basically be made up of a lot of teams from the lesser nations. If they win a lot of games in that competition, it might be that it shoots them up the coefficient. So that might, but I don't know how that's going to work yet. So what's thought is going to happen is that you'll get one place will go to 4th team in France, and the other 3 will go on highest placed teams in UEFA coefficient who don't qualify. And this is where I ask you the really interesting question, Suj. Do you know which teams would have gone into this competition this year?
To be honest, if you'd asked me to name the 32 teams that were in at the start, I wouldn't be able to. But I'm going to assume, I mean, like take Sevilla, for example. They've done really well in the Europa League in a while. Yep. Are they in the Champions League to start with?
They were in Chelsea's group, weren't they?
Oh, okay, fine. So not them, but maybe the likes of Valencia.
I'll make it easy for you. If this is what happened,
yeah.
say this had got introduced last year and it had gone to the highest clubs who had not qualified for the Champions League this year, the 3 teams that would have gone into the competition are Arsenal, Tottenham, and Ajax.
Okay.
So what would we have had? 6 teams.
6 teams in the Champions League.
Now, the English clubs currently, this is where this is really interesting. The English clubs currently, the big 6, are all ranked, I think, in the top 15 or 16 currently on the UEFA coefficients. If this sticks in 3 years' time, we are probably going to have 6 representatives in the Champions League.
Yeah, our league is only getting bigger, better, and stronger, and more depth. I think you're right. I think we're the most likely to have 6 teams than Spain. They don't have the depth, in Germany and Italy. They don't have the depth in their league, which we do, I think. So I think you're right in that we will end up with more teams in the Champions League. If that happens, and it is based off a coefficient, then it won't be long before the other European nations start saying, nah, hang on a second, this is not working in the way we wanted it to, because basically England's getting all the teams in. We want to change this up again. And we know everything goes through cycles, right? 10, 15 years, and they mix it up because people get bored. But I do think if we consistently had 6 teams in the Champions League again and again, and let's say we actually start winning it, apart from other than Liverpool, but consistently start bringing it back home, then I think people will get upset and want to change it up again.
This is where you need to ask me how I feel as a Tottenham fan, looking at it and knowing that there's a good chance my team doesn't have to do a lot and might still be in the Champions League.
How do you feel as a Tottenham fan, knowing that you could get Champions League football without deserving it, and then Harry Kane stays because he's still got Champions League football, and so does Jose because he's qualified for the Champions League without even getting you in the top 4.
2024. Listen, that prick better not be in charge of my team by then. I think it's disgraceful.
Yeah,
genuinely. Let's take the situation now, right? Where Tottenham are 6th in the league, 3 points off of Chelsea. Arsenal were, I think, another, I want to say 5 or 6 points adrift, but with an amazing run in, right? Imagine it doesn't matter. They could look around Europe and go, yeah, all them nations are likely to qualify for next season's Champions League. It doesn't matter. Probably going to get in anyway. What kind of bullshit is that, where I go into the last 3-4 games of the season and I'm in a fight, for example, with Chelsea to finish 4th, and it's worth millions of pounds for the football club, and then, actually, it doesn't matter because Tottenham will probably get in anyway, or say Tottenham beat Chelsea, Chelsea would get in instead, for example. What does that make for our Premier League product? The top 4 race, for example.
How much stick did Wenger get back in the day when he said that getting in the top 4 is really important, or what have you? It's like, you don't get any trophies for finishing top 4. Well, it's going to be similar in the mindset of we don't get any trophies for having a good UEFA coefficient. But I do see, like, take I don't know. What came into my mind earlier was does in certain context the Champions League become more important than the league? And when you've got 19 fixtures over 14 fixtures, does it mean people will punt the league a little bit to do better in Europe? So, for example, you could end up take Chelsea, whatever position they're in right now in the league, as 4th, could stand more chance of qualifying for next year's Champions League by going a couple of rounds further in the Champions League and losing their 4th spot in the league. So they will sack off the league a little bit to just make sure they do better in the Champions League. I feel like the prioritization might be, doing better in the Champions League is more important than finishing top 4 in your league because of the whole coefficient element involved as part of it. So, it does change the integrity of the league massively.
How can it possibly be that West Ham might finish 5th 5 years in a row and Tottenham finish 10th 5 years in a row? And because of historical performance, Tottenham get in, when for 5 years in a row, say, West Ham been better. But because you never got there, your coefficient's not good enough. Unless, I guess, if you finish 5th 5 times in a row, you'd constantly be in Europa League. So that would give you a chance to improve that coefficient, possibly. You'd have to get a coefficient high enough, you'd probably have to you'd have to get to probably the semis, finals in that competition to do well enough to then jump this to get into the Champions League. Look at the Premier League now. I don't really want to criticize the Premier League this year, and I don't really want to criticize football this year because I think the players have done an amazing job throughout the Premier League as a whole to give us a product that majority-wise has actually been pretty watchable. But we're in a situation now in the Premier League where the only 2 things that are of interest is who qualifies for the Champions League, i.e. we think Man City have won the league, United have probably got top 4 sewn up, Leicester are very close, and Chelsea, who currently have pole position for 4th, look better than all the teams chasing them anyway. The only other thing that's interest is who stays up between Fulham and Newcastle, basically. Imagine we take away, if we look at it and we go, well, West Ham, Tottenham, Arsenal, Liverpool are all trying to challenge Chelsea. Everton, yeah. We're basically saying it's only of interest all of a sudden. Imagine this. It's only of interest in our domestic league all of a sudden if it's West Ham or Everton that get close enough to challenging Chelsea. If West Ham or Everton fall away, we go, well, it doesn't actually matter.
It's done now.
All these clubs are going to go in the Champions League anyway. I guess there would be an interest. Will Leicester hold on, for example? And it needs that sort of thing, a Leicester City to break in to change the monopoly, for example. But as it stands, we're looking at a strong possibility because the reason for this is, if you look around domestic leagues in Europe, even some of the smaller nations, you're getting regular teams winning the same league, for example. So I think Dynamo Zagreb, for example, have won the majority of the last 10 Croatian leagues, for example.
Slavia Prague,
PSG,
Czech Republic.
PSG are never not going to finish in the top 4 in France, for example. You generally speaking, the only nations that seem to get changes in terms of who might qualify for the Champions League is a little bit rotation of 4th position in Spain. And obviously in the Premier League, there's a little bit of rotation between the big 6, and you get the odd one. Like obviously Leicester won the league. And Leicester have done well this year.
Or not so much. Atlanta, Sassuolo, or whoever else getting in a little bit here and
there. Atalanta very recently, but then they've had to start at the bottom of the coefficient, for example. Atalanta, despite obviously getting to Champions League quarterfinals and last 16, their coefficient's far lower than the English teams. The English teams as well get a higher coefficient automatically because of being English. They also get a higher distribution of the TV money just because they're an English club. It's not leveled out. If you look in 2019, Ajax made far less money than nearly every team that went out in the last 16 of the Champions League. Because they were a team from the Eredivisie, they just don't get the same slice of prize money, TV money, anything. The majority of, I think Bayern Munich went out in the last 16, and I think they made nearly double the money despite Ajax being a minute away of getting to the final. So we talk about closing how are you going to? You look at even Ajax that year, very, very easily could have been in the Champions League final, came from nowhere, great historic club, but because they're Dutch, they don't make as much money as a team from Germany, in spite of the fact that team from Germany went out in the last 16. That can't be right, surely.
Yeah.
So the English clubs have English, and I think it's Spain, then England, then I think Germany, then Italy, then France, and then you've got Portugal, Russia. And obviously, the further you go down that table, the gap from the big 4 down is massive. Obviously, PSG hoover a lot of the French money at the moment comes in through TV and obviously prize money because they do well, etc. I don't even think them having a 4th extra team will change that much.
No. I agree with you on that.
Do you see the 4th team from France particularly? What does it do? Maybe give the bigger clubs there like Lyon and Marseille, gives them perhaps a bigger chance of automatically being. Monaco's never going to be a big club. It's a country, isn't it?
Principality, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting. I'm just thinking about like what happens to the likes of Barcelona, for example, who now are in the financial quagmire and need to claw themselves out of it. If they went on a run of 5 years of not making it out of the group stages or what have you, because they didn't have the players,
wouldn't matter.
Are they going to start dropping behind?
Wouldn't matter. If you take that with, say, Barcelona, if this happens where they guarantee 3 clubs for UEFA coefficient, you could probably list a number of clubs who will never not play in the Champions League again. And certainly Real Madrid and Barcelona would be a part of that. There is if they suddenly finished 10th in Spain and even went out of the previous year's Champions League group stage, their coefficient would be high enough that absolutely they would be in the following season. Because they're a club from Spain. They make the biggest UEFA coefficient, they make all the TV money, etc. There is no way that their coefficient wouldn't be high enough to get them back in, unless everybody across Europe pissed it up. And we had a top 4 in England of Leicester, West Ham, Villa, Everton, for example. What you'd have to for them not to be in it again. It would just have to be across Europe. Everybody pissed it up. And by the way, Real Madrid would probably still get in as part of the example. Yeah. So we are, although it doesn't say close shop, it is. If it goes to UEFA coefficient in terms of ranking, we are talking about a closed shop where there are 10 or so clubs who, unless they all piss it up the wall together, are always going to be in.
I understand that. What does that leave with the Europa League and this conference, UEFA Conference Cup? league.
So these changes are already
Trophy.
come into effect for next season as part of the 3-year cycle. I'm not sure a lot of people are actually aware of the changes for next season. So there's a big change in Europa League. Is that basically it's not going to be as many games to win it. There's not going to be a last 32 stage as such anymore. They're reducing the amount of teams that are going to be in it. The Europa League's basically going to become the format now of the Champions League. And what you'll get in that, a similar idea where the 8 group winners automatically go to the last 16. And the third place teams from the Champions League will play off with teams who finish second in Europa League groups to make up the last 16.
Okay.
So if you win a Europa League group, you get to skip the last 32 round, basically. So it's actually going to be a smaller competition. The teams who finish third, this is the laughable bit, the teams that finish third in Europa League next season will drop into this new UEFA Conference League. Now, basically, nobody across Europe's getting more European places next season than what they currently get now. So ordinarily, we'd have 3 representatives in Europa League. Next year, we just have 2. And those 2 places should come from the FA Cup winners and the team that finishes 5th in the league. Now, as it stands, we've got 3 of the 4 FA Cup semi-finalists are in the top 4 in the Champions League. So it will create an extra league placing. So, for example, are you 5th at the moment?
We are 5th at the moment.
Yeah. So you would take the league placing for 5th. And as it stands now, Tottenham are 6th. So you would take the additional FA Cup placing. We get 1 place in the UEFA Conference League, and nobody's going to want this. Currently, the team that will get that is the team that wins the Carabao Cup, which obviously my team is in the final. Imagine that as this is why we need to be careful with the League Cup. I mean, who wants that? We'll knock out all the teams that are the big 6. All right, you won't be in the EFL Cup next year. We're going to make everybody else play in it. Oh, and by the way, your carrot is you get through to the UEFA Conference League next season with kickoffs that are rumoured to be 3:45 p.m. on a Thursday. And the majority of teams you're going to play, let's be honest, are from weaker nations. So you're going to have long trips. There's no doubt about it. You're going to play a lot of teams in Eastern Europe.
If City win the Carabao Cup, then it goes to 7th.
It will go.
We're not doing this fair play league or like whoever's got the best fair play record, because that's happened in the past as well. I remember even with my club where we've got into competitions because of black and yellow cards or something.
Imagine that, right? Last day of the season. This is interesting. Let's say Everton and Villa. Let's say City beat Tottenham in the League Cup final. Let's say Villa and Everton are knocking it out for who's going to finish 7th on the last day of the season. I'd ask Villa and Everton fans now, do you want it? Because there's a lot of clubs who often say, we've had teams like
Burnley, do now.
We've had teams like Burnley. Fulham obviously got to the Europa League final in 2010. Less fashionable clubs who sometimes when they get in, there's a lot of Burnley fans who think, and Jack at Turfy Top has always said to us, no, I want to be in it. Like if the chance is there, I want to be in it. There's a lot of Burnley fans who reflect on the amount of qualifying and games that Burnley had at the start of that season that it really hurt them in the Premier League, and they were just better off without it because the sides of the club are not ready to be in that stage. But this is a flip. The Villa and Everton want to be travelling into the far east of Europe to play games on a Thursday at 3:45 p.m.
No one does.
And the prize for winning.
If you don't do it, how do you get coefficient points within?
Well,
UEFA?
That's the interesting bit, because obviously, if winning a lot of games in that tournament will get you up the coefficient ladder, then you need to be in it.
Mm.
You need to be in it to give yourself a chance of potentially having. And for the English clubs, it would be beneficial, right? If you can. So we might 2028. We might have 7 teams in the Champions League because Leicester have really got up their coefficient, for example.
I would take it if we got it next season. I would take it. I wouldn't make me jump off the rooftops with joy, but I don't think that's what you do when you're joyous, is it? Jump off a rooftop, but you know what I mean. Jump in for joy. But at the same time, I would do it next season because I want to know what it's all about. Try and figure it out. If we do get some coefficient ranking points. Also, if you're talking about some of these lesser teams that we could come up against, we'll heavily rotate. But I do think we have enough depth, especially from an attacking point of view, to be able to win some of these games. I mean, the likes of Lanzini, Yarmolenko, these guys are not getting any minutes. I know they're injured, some of them right now, but we've got enough attacking depth in our squad and reasonable defensive depth to win some of these games by rotating the squad. It's just in the middle of the park where we're a bit light, but I'm sure we'll reinforce a little bit. So I think I would take it. But you're right. I mean, I'm not going to be, yay, we're in Europe. Whereas the Europa League, I think I'd be more interested in, because I feel like I'd just possibly have the opportunity to go to some more interesting games, stadiums, matches, that kind of thing. Whereas here, nah. One of our good friends, Sham, right? 2 Guys, 1 Cup. He talks to me all the time, and he's been on my case for a while now. When we go to Europe, so let's go and do some European away days and stuff. And I get it. I get the excitement. I'm up for it as well, but not if we're going to like some random place in the middle of nowhere to watch a game in front of 5,000 people. I'm not.
Well done for not mentioning anywhere particular.
Yeah. I'm just not doing it at that point, right? And especially if I'm taking a whole day off on a Thursday to watch a game in the middle of the afternoon.
Well, you need to take 2 days off, mate. You ain't taking one day off.
Just not doing it. So I'm less likely to be inclined to want to go and support the team. Whereas Europa League, I'd be much more interested in, definitely.
I wonder if once we get to 2024, if this revamp of the Champions League, which it looks like 98% is going to happen, if it will make the Europa League then a more interesting product in the sense that it will be the old style format, presumably, unless I haven't heard that they're going to change that, where, okay, yeah, it's now down to 32 teams in the Europa League and it's a more interesting format, possibly. I don't know, does it? One of the problems with that competition, I keep repeating it, is after the 2 nights of the Champions League, who the fuck wants to watch Europa League by the time it comes around unless your own team's in it? No one's watching that unless they're in it.
Yeah.
Or you've got to have some. I mean, imagine that now with UEFA Conference League at 3:45 p.m. Imagine her indoors. You've had 2 nights of this shit, and now you're going to watch this shit. Worst quality football on a 3:45 on a Thursday is the rumored kickoff times for this Conference League. You must be joking. You imagine that. Imagine having a game in London at 3:45 p.m. on a Thursday. That would be fun.
Yeah, it's funny. I think European football is, like you've mentioned, going to take some adjustment to in the next couple of years, and we'll figure out if it works or if it doesn't work. But
I've just had this vision of you being in the tournament. And for those who don't know, West Ham, they're obviously around the corner from Stratford, which is one of the most popular kind of terminals in London for transport, etc. 4,000 overseas fans marching back to Stratford at 6 p.m. on a Thursday. Stay a bit, mate.
Mate, from our stadium, you can probably walk to London City Airport, so they could just fly straight out.
Yeah, true. Or it depends on your destination, right? Do like London City Airport.
One of the best.
Oh, yes.
In and out. No pissing about.
No pissing about. I don't know if that's different now with COVID, etc. Well, I don't suppose. Is it even open at the moment, London City Airport?
Yeah, it will be. There are flights, but it's very limited.
None of us are going anywhere anyway. I keep saying I can't even go to Tottenham, never mind overseas. I'm not happy with these changes, to put it bluntly. We are, although we're not advertising it as a closed shop, it's potentially what we're looking at just because of those 3 places, the extra. And the whole idea of the 10 group games, it's about money. It's about more guaranteed money. It's about more money for the elite, more varying fixtures, so they say, because you play. That's what I talk about. You play 9 different teams in the group stage every year. It won't take 4 or 5 years to build up that you've played all 36 teams, and there will constantly be similar teams in that competition. It's unless they change those 3 extra places, it's not going to open up. The only way you're going to get like the likes of Dynamo Zagreb's getting in the Champions League and closing that gap is they come together, they do really well in it, they hold the coefficient, and they have to do it on a cycle for 2-3 years or so, or otherwise they're going to be there one year, they're not going to be there the next year, etc.
James, as always, absolute education listening to you go through that, and I think I've learned a little bit, and my thoughts around it are very similar to yours in that I'm probably less negative about it. I'd like to see how it plays out before I make a judgment, but I do think you're right in your prediction on what will happen in terms of repetitive games and same teams back in the Champions League. I mean, we have listeners, though, throughout Europe. So if you are a supporter of a team that is or isn't in the Champions League, then head over to Twitter @PlanetFPL Pod, tweet of the show, and chuck your comments in below.
think the biggest one is, for me as a Tottenham fan, if we're not going to be challenging for the league, if the coefficient's going to be big enough that keeps getting us in, for example, because we're an English club and we've got historical performance for regularly qualifying in Europe, what's the point in my league season if I don't win the league? It doesn't mean anything. So the bread and butter should be my Premier League, should be the most important. Obviously, if you're in the Champions League, great. But in terms of your thinking for next season, in terms of Tottenham fans' hopes for this season, yeah, okay, there's the cup final against Man City, but can we catch Chelsea? Can we catch Chelsea? If it doesn't matter, what's the point? Just imagine right now, Tottenham's final 8 games of the season, or 9 games I think we have left, if they don't matter, if they literally don't matter if Tottenham finish 4th or 12th. What's the point in that? We can't get away from sporting integrity. And this does a little bit. And it's the first sign of closing the shop. And it's not good. Even though my club's one of the ones who's likely to benefit, I can't support it.
Agreed. James, do you want to tell all the listeners what we've got left lined up for this week? We have more Clash of the Correspondents, Sky with a guest, and more. Two
COTCs to go this week. FPL Gaffer Turfy Topper tomorrow for you. Southampton versus Burnley. Equal on points now, only 1 point clear of Brighton. Are they still in danger? Arsenal versus Liverpool on Thursday for you with 3-5 and FPL Loco Lord. Sky Fantasy Football on Wednesday with Andrew Ferguson from Fantasy Football Hub. I'll be streaming on Friday, 3 o'clock. I'll have the update of all the team news for you ahead of the game week 30 deadline. And we'll obviously be streaming for the final hour before deadline on Saturday morning as well. 5 additional podcasts on Patreon this week as well. As I said on my stream on Friday, if anybody wants to support Planet FPL's content, if you sign up now before the end of the month, I will refund your money, but you will get charged again on Thursday when it's the first of the month. I just don't want anybody to be paying twice
now
in a week.
And exactly, I agree with you exactly. I was going to suggest to people don't sign up until Thursday, but sign up and pay. Sign up and
I'll refund
get a refund. Nice. Excellent. Fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, do head over to Twitter and let's keep this conversation going about European football. We'll be back at you tomorrow. Stay safe wherever you are. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.